is Finlay Colville. I work at Alcohol Transaction up in Aberdeen. It's a third sector organisation that supports people in relation to alcohol and drug use. I've been there for about 5 years now, and my role is a substance use worker. But I've also got the lead working with people who are using imaging performance enhancing drugs, and also developing the service that we provide for those clients as well. So what I'm going to chat to you today about is a little bit about stats, just briefly for our local area, then move on to talking about some of the work that I've undertaken in the last 3-4 years in relation to the IPED use, and then looking at setting up our standalone IPED clinic, looking at some of kind of how that went and how to move forward from this point onwards. So I'll change the next slide. So I don't know if you can see that stats. Probably doesn't matter if you can't, because there's a few issues with it. So this was our old system of getting needle exchange stats, and in the different quarters, if a client came in 2 or 3 times, it would only be counted once. As well as that, if the individual's primary drug that was getting recorded was something like methadone, the steroid use wouldn't have got counted in those stats either. So there's a few issues with the accuracy of the stats, but so I would expect the total visits to be quite a bit higher than that. But as you can see, when I started, we were seeing an increase every year in the number of people who are accessing the service in relation to picking up safe injecting equipment for IPED use, predominantly steroids, but human growth hormone, melanotan, and things like that as well. What we've moved on to now in the last year is the NEO recording system, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, and I'm hoping that that's going to really help us be able to get a bit more in the way of accurate stats for the local area. Obviously, there's a few barriers to NEO in terms of stats as well, like multiple identifiers, people forgetting the details and coming in and setting up again. As well as that, with the IPED clients, quite a lot of peer distribution, so people will be coming in and picking up for other folk. I know we've got a few dealers in the area as well, we've picked up quite a lot now and distributing that as well. So getting a kind of sense of the total number of IPED users in the local area is actually quite difficult. And I know that's something which is the same for nationally as well. So picking up trends as well becomes a bit more difficult. I think we're looking into a module specifically on IPED users. So if someone comes in, they can get a lot more information from that IPED user. So things like all the drugs that they're using at the moment, we're just recording whether it's steroids, human growth hormone, melanotan, or other IPEDs. So going into a lot of detail about what type of steroids getting used, what are the ancillary drugs getting used for side effects, things like that as well. Looking at all the different side effects that are associated, post-cycle treatment, whole range of information which will hopefully help us build kind of local trends but also national trends as well. So that'll be a really positive thing moving forward. Yes. So as I said at the start, when I started at ATA, I chatted to a lot of the needle exchange workers. One area that was definitely highlighted was that their confidence working with IPED users was a lot lower than other injecting drug users. So I decided that staff training was one of the main areas of priority. Everyone was pretty confident about working alongside kind of safer injecting advice, what needles people needed to use, but when it came to dosages, the side effect drugs people were using, post-cycle treatment, some of the side effects associated with that, people's confidence kind of dropped quite quickly. So it was important to work with the staff in terms of the whole area, in terms of someone's IPED use, because obviously it helps engagement, builds therapeutic relationships, makes staff feel more confident, which is a positive thing as well, and ultimately helps with the harm reduction message that we're putting out there to those clients as well. So that was kind of main priority, but also increasing awareness of our service. When I started, it was certainly seen as a transactional kind of service that IPED users could use, but it wasn't really set up for them, so they'd come in, try and get their needles and equipment and things like that as quickly as possible and then get out. And so it was about trying to just increase awareness that our service was designed for IPED users as well. Things like the posters that you might have seen on exchange supplies are really great for that. It's really visual. I've got a picture of one moving forward. It just helps clients see that we are there for them as well, and then obviously with staff being able to ask a little bit more questions in terms of post-cycle treatment, things like that, people were starting to actually stop and have much more discussion with us about their use, which was really positive. Increasing awareness of our service was kind of mainly in gyms, that was met with mixed results. Some of the more kind of independent gyms were quite receptive to me coming in and putting up posters and putting up cars and things like that, advertising our needle exchange service. But some of the kind of the bigger gyms, national gyms weren't so keen on having any discussion about steroid use. It was, just that they didn't have anyone using steroids in their gym, but I could try a few gyms down the road. So that kind of was mixed, but I think the staff training was probably the most important area. Another thing that we've been doing over the last 4 or 5 years is needle exchange clients can be referred to myself if they're wanting a bit more information. That can be, I suppose, it can be on anything, but mostly it's about post-cycle treatment, dosages, kind of side effect drugs, and sometimes got side effects as well. So I'll get their details and give them a call or email them, and they'll either come into the office and meet with myself, or just speak to them over the phone. So for example, this week I've spoken to a couple of different guys, one who had been to his GP for low mood and depression. She'd asked him if he was using any drugs, so he decided that he maybe mentioned the fact that he was using steroids, and he got referred to myself. I have spoken to him, and he said really he doesn't want to stop using steroids. It was just he felt like he should tell the doctor that he was. But I'm going to meet with him and talk about kind of harm reduction and go through what he's doing and if there's links there in terms of his mental health or what's happening there. And the other individual contacted me because they were worried about lumps and bumps from injecting human growth hormone. So we're just looking for a bit of advice around that as well. So that's the kind of thing I'm speaking to people about on a weekly basis. So move forward. Another area I should say that people were asking a lot about was about blood tests and about health checks and where they could access those. So with that, we thought it probably, that's where the evidence was for setting up our own standalone IPED clinic. Up until this point, this was all done through the needle exchanges. But we thought actually, obviously we'd seen it work in other areas in terms of John Campbell's steroid clinic in Glasgow, and there's other IPED clinics as well that were set up that were really engaging with lots of clients. So we set up a questionnaire in the needle exchange and asked if people would access the service that was providing blood pressure checks, and whether, and if not, what else would help them engage with that. We did it for a month and we had like 13 responses. 11 folks said that they absolutely would go to a service like that. The 2 that didn't, one was due to language barriers, which could have been resolved with something like Language Line. The other was a personal trainer who didn't feel he needed any additional advice, so that was fine. The other kind of 11 folk all said they would access with blood pressure checks, but they also all said that it would be good to have liver function tests, other kind of kidney function, hormone level testing as well. We weren't at a point where we could provide that, but we did set up a clinic specifically with blood pressure checks, as they said. But some of the other evidence to do that, it was just the discussion within the site. I think Kevin was mentioning there the importance of listening to your service users, and the IPED users were so often asking, where can I get health checks done? They were accessing services like MediChecks online when they got their blood sent online, and they were getting reports back from that. So as well as that, people were telling me that they were travelling down to Glasgow and Edinburgh, to John's clinic and to Con's one in Edinburgh as well, and also all up to Inverness, and that's like a 2-hour journey for clients in Aberdeen. So it was obvious that people were looking for a bit more support in terms of health checks, and with that I went down to the clinic in Glasgow and saw the harm reduction work at that kind of clinic. So a good example was John showed me a guy who came in and his liver function was outside the normal parameters, and John had the results there, and you could show the client this is outside the normal parameters, this is because of your oral steroid use. And for me, I was at a point of having to say, the oral steroid use has an impact on your liver function negatively, obviously, and people would say, yeah, I know that, I'm using milk thistle, I'm using Live 52, don't worry, I'm drinking lots of water, it's fine. So much more benefit being able to show someone actually the impact that the steroid use is having on their body, so much more powerful. So I really wanted to kind of set something up which provided more of those kind of health checks for our clients. The last one's been quite a recent recommendation, so I can't claim that was what meant that I set up the clinic, but the SDF did a conference about a year ago on IPEDs, and after that there was an IPED working group set up to kind of discuss IPED use in Scotland. And the recommendation was that we should all be looking to, in the local areas, replicate as close as possible the clinic that John's providing for service users. But this was something that was recommended previous to that as well in different areas. Public Health England in 2015 also said that this is the kind of service that we should be providing for our IPED users. So with all that evidence, we decided to go ahead. This is the poster I was mentioning before, but we set up a room outside of our needle exchange. So one of the barriers a few individuals were saying was coming into the service with other injecting drug users. It's not a big issue for a lot of people, but for some they felt that was a barrier. So we made a completely different entrance. I received funding for a 6-month pilot to do this, and it was fortnightly clinics with 2 staff members, both competent with their IPED knowledge, and the blood pressure checks was kind of the main incentive for folk to come in. As I said, we weren't able to provide other blood tests at that point. It was still safer, still a needle exchange as well, and also kind of enhanced discussion around someone's use at the same time. We advertised it through our own Facebook page and within the needle exchange as well, with kind of information in cards. So yeah, that's kind of how it looked. We ran that for, as I say, 6 months. So evaluating the clinic, was it a success? It's a bit of a twist. Not really. No, it wasn't a success in terms of engagement. Numbers coming through the door was a lot lower than I was expecting. So over the 12 weeks that we ran it, we had 6 engagements, and only 2 of them actually wanted blood pressure checks, and others just wanted to come in and have a chat, which was great, and we were able to have that discussion around their IPED use, but it wasn't exactly what I expected. One person came in and thought he was going to a lecture, so there's maybe a few issues with advertisement as well. But in terms of what we learned, I think the main thing for myself was that providing a specific IPED clinic, you really have to provide all the health checks, much more than just the blood pressure checks. And that really would be enough to get people to come in on a different night and engage with the service. So yeah, blood pressure checks wasn't incentive enough. Also, in terms of advertising, that perhaps advertising within the needle exchange at that point where people had already just picked up all their safe injecting equipment, and then we're going, okay, I'll go there next time, but actually they might not come back to the service for another 6 months, and we only ran for 6 months, so perhaps we weren't able to keep continuing further than that as a third sector organisation, and the evidence was showing that the numbers really weren't high enough to justify continuing in that way. So where are we now? We didn't want to just stop providing a specific service for our IPED users. We still had all the Facebook page and everything up and running, and we're advertising it. So we decided that I would still continue to work every single, once a week on a late night needle exchange service, and I would still be advertising that as an opportunity for clients to come in and engage with myself, get blood pressure checks, and that's going okay. The numbers are increasing in terms of what we were seeing before. Admittedly, some of those people are just popping in the needle exchange and don't actually know that the clinic's on, but I'll still count those numbers. Collecting evidence, moving forward, I think, I don't think we really need to collect much more evidence. I think it's already been done. I think with all the recommendations we've got and how well we can see the services like John and Con's are working, I don't think we really need to collect any more to know that we need to move towards that kind of service. It's just about how to do that. So for ourselves, I'm working with my service manager Simon, and also within NHS, people like Fiona have been really supportive to look at how we can do that. So there's already been some preliminary discussion about whether we as staff can take blood tests, so be trained in phlebotomy and be able to take those blood tests, but we still need to discuss how we then get that transported, tested, and then the results coming back, and if there's protocols there as well. I suppose we're in a slightly difficult situation where we're a third sector organisation, but we're going to need a lot of support from NHS as well to be able to provide that. So we're at the moment just kind of trying to work out how to move forward with that, but we do know that that's the goal that we're aiming to move forward. So that's really me. So any questions?